We come to you, of course, just 48 hours after the acquittal of President Trump, a process that certainly crystallized the divide in our country.
Crystallized his support?
Senator Warren, I want to start with you. You have said that on day one of your presidency, one of your first orders of business will be to order your Justice Department to launch new investigations into the Trump administration. After a grueling impeachment and what is likely to be a polarizing election, is investigating President Trump the best way to try to unify the country?
Look, I think no one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States. We watched on...
Yay! I mean, she's right. The President of the United States shouldn't be above the law.
Duh, yeah.
But
it's like an obvious fucking, come on, guys.
You can't just keep talking about what a shitty person Trump is and act like that's a campaign. Yes, you're a Democrat. Most Democrats think Trump is bad. So what other how else are you different? Because I don't think that anyone on that stage thinks that Donald Trump is the answer. I don't think that's what anyone's saying. So give me something new.
Wednesday, as Republicans, all but one, locked arms to protect him from impeachment. But we need to reestablish the rule of law in this country. I believe in an independent commission in our Justice Department that investigates crimes committed by our own government. It is an important part of accountability. It is an important part for every administration that we hold ourselves accountable to the American people. Look, people around this country are losing faith in our government. They're losing faith that government works for them. They see a government that just works great if you're rich. It works great if you're a lobbyist. It works great if you're a corporate executive. But they see themselves and their children with less and less and less. And we could do something about it. It's not enough simply to talk about the future. We have to be willing to stand up to those who now control our government and make that government instead work for us. We can do child care in this country for every baby. We can invest in our public schools. We can cancel student loan debt for 43 million Americans, but only if we are willing to take control of our government away from the giant corporations and billionaires, return it to the people. This is about our government. This is about our democracy. This is about our future.
Mr. Yang, you said that the notion of a leader, quote, throwing the president before them in jail is not the way things are done here in the United States and would make it, quote, very hard for any party to govern.
Sorry, what did she say?
A
leader
throwing their leader in jail is not necessarily the right way to do it. Like the leader in front of them.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Sustainably moving.
Sorry. Is this okay? What we're doing right now?
Yeah.
You're able to keep up with the? Yeah. Because we could maybe get over on this side if you want as well.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I have it pulled up.
All right. Perfect. All right.
Forward. Does that mean that any alleged misconduct by the president or his administration should not be investigated?
There are, of course, limits, and you have to see what the facts are on the ground after you assume office. But
okay, I'm sorry. That was the stupidest fucking question I've ever heard. But let's let him respond. Jesus Christ.
The fact is, if you look around the world, the countries that have thrown past presidents into jail have generally been developing countries. And unfortunately, that's a pattern that once you establish is very, very hard to break. What's a more American tradition? We move the country forward. We don't focus on the mistakes of the leaders that are leaving office. Most Americans do not care about what a particular individual did so much as they care about their families' well-being, their community, their town. That's where Americans' focus wants. They want the American president. They want the president, of course, the American president. Sorry about that. They want the president to be focused on that, and that's where our attention should be. We should not.
Here's a cute little math button.
I see. What's that? Can
It's
you I've seen people wearing hats about that and stuff. What's with the math thing?
I just think it's cute. I just think Andrew Yang's a little cutie.
There's not some company behind it or something?
I don't think so. I think it's genuinely just like Andrew Yang's kind of a nerd.
Huh. I've seen hats. I've seen people wearing math hats. So, interesting. One thing real quick. Whenever these guys are answering, it's like you see these other candidates raising their hands like, ooh, he said this, and that wasn't quite like I would say. Let's see, what did he just say here?
Wants their community, their town. That's where Americans' focus wants.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Americans care about their communities first and foremost. Oh, we shouldn't care about just us. Oh, fuck off. Like, literally, come on. They try to take these little tiny, and it's like, you, God.
I think also, like, the format of these Democratic debates is,
it sucks.
It's very, well, I think, I get why it's non-confrontational, but I think it's too non-confrontational. I think the idea is if you have these candidates tear each other apart, then they're just doing the job of the Republicans for them, right? Mm-hmm. Is like the idea. If Bernie can go and make Pete Buttigieg look really shitty and Buttigieg gets the nomination for the party, then he's kind of already handicapped himself by having all of the flaws in his plans laid out there. But I think that these debates would be a lot better for Democratic publicity if they were harder. I think that they need to be, like, responses need to be somehow forced to be more specific, right? Like asking a candidate specifically questions about their policy. Having their opponents be able to ask them questions. If, like, I would love it if Bernie could turn to Elizabeth Warren and say, like, why is this not included in your healthcare plan? Or why is this included? Have someone else ask her why something is included in it, right? Like, I would love it if that's what the debates were.
Right.
But instead they're just too easy because I think the party's too worried about how it's going to make them look in the general.
Well, yeah, and it might just be at that rate, it might just be kind of an issue with the formatting of the debates themselves, because who would really be able to follow those kinds of, like, it takes like somebody who follows politics and this and that to really kind of know those minutia of the actual conversation. And so it's almost like the format itself doesn't favor a great conversation.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that just in general, like, the debates need to be more pointed, like, and more directional and goal-oriented, because I think the way they are now is just kind of candidates come on stage and they kind of sort of explain their policies, but not really. And so I think that's where, like, the confusion comes in, where a lot of people think that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie are the same candidate, or that Pete and Amy are the same candidate.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a good point.
They want the American president. They want the president, of course, the American president, sorry about that. They want the president to be focused on that, and that's where our attention should be. We should not fall into a pattern that has been disastrous in other countries.
Senator Sanders.
Along with Elizabeth and Amy, we sat for 2 weeks listening to the impeachment process. And here's what I think the horror and the danger of what happened was: not only the acquittal of Trump, who in fact committed impeachable offenses and obstructed Congress, it is the precedent that it set. The precedent that it set. And what that precedent is about now is, in the future, you're going to have presidents who say, hey, Governor, you want highway money? You better support me, or you're not going to get it, because I am the president. I can do anything I want. Hey, Congress, you want to investigate me? Don't be ridiculous. Who cares about the Congress? Who cares about the separation of powers? Who cares about the Constitution of the president? I'm the president of the United States. I have all of the power, and I'm able to intimidate members of my own party. The saddest aspect of this whole thing is you have Republicans in the Senate who knew better. They knew that Donald Trump is a crook. They knew that Donald Trump is a cheat. But they didn't have the guts, with the exception of Romney, to vote against him.
Mr.
That is a sad day.
So I did start the Need to Impeach movement in October of 2017. And my father was one of the people who prosecuted the Nazi war criminals after World War II. And that's part of the reason I started, because when you see something really wrong in the United States, you're supposed to stand up against it and fight against it. And that's what I was doing. But the Republicans have rolled over. They've had a sham trial. They've refused to have witnesses. They've covered up the truth for the American people. And it doesn't matter anymore that he's a crook, and he's always been a crook, and he always will be a crook. Right now, what we have to do is we have to beat him in November. And we have to beat him because he's incompetent and bad for the American people. And that's the case we have to make now. Is he a crook? I knew that 2 years ago. Is he going to be more of a crook now that he believes he can get away with anything? Of course he is. But the job of the people on this stage is to beat him in November. And that's going to be based on what we can deliver for the American people. The fact that he's incompetent as a president, his economy isn't delivering for working people, the jobs don't pay enough for people to live on. We've got to take him down on the economy and get him out of the White House as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Impeachment is, of course, over, but Republicans in Congress have already started investigating Vice President Biden's son, Hunter. Mayor Buttigieg, do you think that there's a danger for the Democratic Party to nominate a candidate who is still under the threat of investigation?
No. And we're not going to let them change the subject. This is not about Hunter Biden or Vice President Biden or any Biden. This is about an abuse of power by the president. Look, the Vice President and I and all of us are competing, but we've got to draw a line here. And to be the kind of president, to be the kind of human being who would seek to turn someone against his own son, who would seek to weaponize a son against his own father, is an unbelievably dishonorable thing that is just one more example of why we as a party have to be completely united in doing whatever it takes at the end.
Because this is a country founded on nepotism. 100%.
Well, I think that, this is like the thing. They're doing the Donald Trump bad man thing again. And, I get it. He's not a nice guy. I don't think anyone was under the impression he is. And I think that, if you're going to waste your entire time on this debate stage where you have the opportunity to, win people to your side and tell them about your platform and why it's right and why it's the best platform on that stage, and you're just going to get up there and you're going to waste it talking about Donald Trump's bad when people already know that. Why are you here? Get off the stage. And I also think that this is a very interesting question in general, because in 2016, we had a candidate who was at risk of being under trial, who was being investigated for many things, the emails. This isn't something the Democratic Party doesn't know how to deal with. Yeah. And that's not why Hillary lost. And I think if they're bringing it up and the idea is, well, do you think we should have a candidate that isn't under investigation because that's why Hillary lost? I think if that's the angle that they're trying to pull, that's also pretty weak too, because Hillary lost because Hillary didn't get the support of her own party. Right. It wasn't because people were scared about the emails. And if they thought she was corrupt, they thought she was corrupt for more than that.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, Hillary. Don't even get me started, man. Even that campaign slogan, "I'm with her," is just it's a pandering slogan. It's
I'm a woman. I'm a woman.
Pandering campaign. Ultimate. Honestly, I'm a big old buffoon myself. Did a couple calculations and little head calculations myself and went over there and voted for Hillary myself. And I couldn't feel more ridiculous having not campaigned harder for Bernie, because a lot of this stuff didn't need to happen. I think there's enough support behind him in 2016 to get him into the office, and it's definitely still a lot of pent-up Bernie tension.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, you'll see a lot of people will attack Bernie about what he's done to the party, and I kind of get it, because the reason that this stage up here is so divisive, the reason that I look at candidates like Pete and Amy, and Joe Biden, and I look at them and I'm kind of a little bit disgusted, is I think because of the things that Bernie brought up in 2016. I think that that's such an important part of the discussion still. But ultimately, I don't know. You can attack Bernie for dividing the party, but it was a conversation that needed to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of us that voted for Hillary in the past enjoyed a lot of the things that he was talking about, but were skeptical about it. And I think that, you don't get to go back in time and redo things, but we do have another election, and here he is again. So let's give that a try, man. I tried that shit in 2016, and I think that I'm with a lot of people who made that utility calculation in their head and decided to do something that went against their moral gut. And it's this is the lesser of the two evils argument, This is what we get for...
I don't want that to be what presidential elections are. I don't think that they should be well, this candidate sucks, but this candidate sucks less. I want a candidate that's good. I want a candidate that I can vote for, and I can be happy that I put my name down for them.
I like that.
At the end of the day, to make sure that this president does not get a second term.
Vice President Biden.
Look, I thank my colleague for saying that. It is a diversion. But here's the deal. Whomever the nominee is, the president's going to make up lies about. He thinks he has free reign right now. One of the things that I think is really important is we have to be authentic with the American people about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And by the way, Colonel Vindman got thrown out of the White House today, walked out. I think we should, and at the same time, he should be pinning a medal on Vindman and not on Rush Limbaugh. And I think what we should be doing now, I think we should all stand and give Colonel Vindman a show of how much we supported him. Stand up and clap for Vindman.
Hey, everybody, load up a bowl and smoke that shit for Vindman.
Get up there.
Everybody.
That's who we are.
Yes.
We are not what Trump is.
I'm just going to not talk about policy and get people to stand up for me, because I'm Joe Biden, and the less is more for me. I'm Charmin. I'm the Charmin fucking candidate for you.
Criticized Senator Bernie Sanders' track record in the Senate.
I'm sure we were able to hear that question.
Okay, sure.
Neither.
The Democratic Party's last presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton, has criticized Senator Bernie Sanders' record in the Senate, saying nobody likes him, nobody wants to work with him. He got...
Yes, let's do it. I'm so fucking happy.
I'm ready to see Bernie take this shit head on.
Let's go.
Okay, they're giving him the chance to be aggressive, which I think is what a lot of Sanders supporters want to see, is a more aggressive Bernie. Because he's coming up there, and I personally think he has a really great platform. He doesn't ever do enough to show it because he's too nice of a guy. So hopefully he goes at it this time.
He's hedging, you know? He's hedging.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to be mean to the other people on that stage, because once again, if he loses to them, they're facing Trump, and he doesn't want to expose their weaknesses. And also, these are people who ultimately do agree on a lot of things. Yeah, they're up there debating, but they do agree on a lot of things. That's why they're all on the left.
Yep.
And so like going up there and criticizing them is, I think, hard. Especially, I don't think that Bernie's like a bad person.
Yeah.
I think he's a very genuine person.
Yeah.
And so for him to, like, I think it's hard for him to go up there and insult people and tell them that they're wrong. But
for sure,
he needs to definitely show that he is a unique candidate and that his platform is the best if he wants to do well.
Yeah.
Nothing done. Senator Klobuchar, you serve with Senator Sanders in the Senate. Is he going to be able to get the support? Not if you like him, but is he going to be able to get the support that he needs from Republicans?
Okay. I like...
You like granola and yogurt
and minivans and Toyota Priuses.
Bernie just fine. We actually have worked together on a number of things, including pharmaceuticals. We actually had a vote late at night one time, Klobuchar-Sanders amendment, to bring in less...
No.
It was not. To bring in less expensive drugs from other countries, since in this great state of New Hampshire, like in Minnesota and Vermont, we can see Canada from our porch. And we ended up
Oh, Canada. Okay.
getting, I think, 14 Republican votes. And they might not have noticed what was happening late at night, but we got those. And I think that it is just an example of what we need to do here, because I've been listening to this discussion. I agree with my colleagues. We must unite. But the way that we unite is by having an optimistic economic agenda for America. That is what we must do. And that means taking on a...
Okay, just a thought quickly. She did not answer that question, because they asked Amy Klobuchar that question. They asked her if she thought that Senator Sanders would not be able to work with Republicans, and instead of answering, she says, me and Bernie, both of us, have worked with Republicans in the past. Now, once again, like to answer, since she didn't answer the question, I will. Bernie Sanders can work with Republicans because he's done it before. He's done it in the Senate for however many years, decades now, right? But Amy Klobuchar is being nice. Just... It's interesting that she's up there and she refuses to talk bad about other Democrats for now. We'll see how it goes.
President, if you want to talk about being tough enough to take him on, taking on a president that literally went down to Mar-a-Lago after he signed that Republican tax bill and looked at all his friends and said, you just got a lot richer. That is Exhibit A for those carpenters in Pennsylvania and those dairy farmers in Wisconsin and those dock workers that I met with in Michigan. That is an Exhibit A. And we have to be able to make the case to the working people of this country, some of whom voted for Donald Trump, that we have something better to offer, that we are going to take those incredibly regressive parts of that tax bill and put that money into their child care,
Senator,
into their
but just a quick yes or no. Do you think that Senator Sanders will be able to get Republican support in order to pass his bills?
Hey, yo, you called that shit.
That I don't know. I know we did on that bill, but the point is, I think we're better off with someone that has the receipts, someone that has actually won big time with Republicans and independents. And I'm the only one up on this stage, you can check it out, that has consistently won in red congressional districts. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And when I did it, I didn't just do it for me. I led a ticket. I flipped the state house every single time because I have a way of working with people that I think should be valued here as we look at these candidates. And it's one of the reasons that I got the New York Times endorsement along with Elizabeth, and that I got the endorsements of the 3 major papers here in New Hampshire.
Yeah, we're going to go with both of the women.
Yeah, New York Times literally was just like, but a woman in the White House, guys.
You know, how could I put one woman over the other? You
'Cause
do it all the time with the men. Like,
I feel
what
like
the fuck?
it's literally the Juice WRLD song of "These girls are the same."
All girls are the same, no.
New York Times is just secretly Juice WRLD the whole time.
Oh, boy.
Which is the Union Leader, the Seacoast Papers, and the Keene Sentinel. I think that matters. Read those editorials, and you will get a sense of what I'm about.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sanders.
I must confess, I don't get too many newspaper editorial support. Must
What do you mean
confess
you
that.
got the Conway endorsement
I did.
here?
We're very
Okay.
proud of that.
There
All
we
right.
go.
But let me just
Love that shit.
say this. I
He
think the
waved her off. He literally was like, "Thank you, goodbye, shut up."
question started off with Secretary Clinton's critique. I think, quite honestly, as we face one of the great political crises facing America, our job is to look forward and not back to 2016. And I hope that Secretary Clinton and all of us can come together and move in that direction. Now, second of all, in terms of Republicans, let me say that in my own great state of Vermont, my memory is correct, Amy, I got 25% of the Republican vote. And in fact, there were periods when I was in the House of Representatives, a number of years, where I passed more amendments on the floor of the House in a bipartisan way than any other member of the House. And that is when you bring people together on an issue. There are many conservative Republicans, for example, who are concerned about civil liberties. At least they used to be concerned about civil liberties. There are Republicans, as you know, who are concerned about the high cost of prescription drugs. There are ways that we can work with Republicans on issues where we have a common basis. Let's do
Senator.
that.
David.
Lindsay, thank you. Good evening.
Hey, let's go. Number 1 issue. Well, he brought up a couple of them, but yo, marijuana. Everybody can love marijuana. Everybody can make money. John Boehner, the old Speaker of the House, he has so much money invested in the medical marijuana business and as well as recreational marijuana. He's got so much money invested in that it's, yo, there are things, you know, you guys want to talk about, how are we going to get Democrats and Republicans into the same room? I'll tell you how. You load up a fucking bowl.
Well, I mean, on like that same wavelength, I would say like, okay, these people keep talking about we want to move into the future and we want to move into the future strong. And if you want to talk about how to do that in a way that you can unite people moving towards the future, you were talking more like about how young voters are coming into this, right?
Right.
I'm a poli-sci major, so I talk to people about politics a lot. And one thing I've like learned is even people who are like conservative and are young, they're more often than not okay with things like gay marriage, okay with things like marijuana. You can live your life however you want.
Yeah.
They're conservative in like a fiscal sense generally, right? Like they just don't want as high taxes, things like that. So they're never going to support things like Medicare for all, and that's cool. But they are going to care. They don't, like, I know conservatives who don't enjoy the fact that we pay 10 times as much for prescription drugs. So I think that Bernie does a good thing in saying that yeah, like moving towards the future, there are issues, more and more issues that I think as a country we can kind of come together on. Like social issues are not the same like they were back in the 2000s.
Right. Yeah, as far as those issues that kind of come up between friends